an indeterminate amount of time earlier. And that's the story of how I saw Shin Kamen Rider.
I want to kill you. It's not fair.
Lonecrit, come on.
It's not fair.
And now...
Good movie!
Good movie!
Good movie!
Good movie!
Great movie!
Good movie!
Great movie!
Great freaking movie! Good
Great
movie!
movie!
Good
Great
movie!
movie!
Good
I
movie.
clapped for 5 minutes straight.
It
Extremely
broke new
good movie.
ground!
It honestly did.
Unironically,
Especially
yes.
if from what I've heard of other Kamen Rider movies is true, and definitely from what I've seen of the two I've seen so far, aside from this is definitely breaking new ground.
Oh my god, I cried. I'm not gonna say this is like the best Kamen Rider ever. Might actually be the most stylish, though.
Valid.
Yes. It's definitely the most stylish the first one's ever been.
I cried several times.
This movie had me very
Keep in
close
mind,
to.
folks, these guys saw it fresh. I saw it in the theater weeks ago. This is your live reaction from these folks here.
And guess what? You undersold the shit out of this freaking movie, dog.
Yeah, dude, what the hell?
The motorcycle drove on its own in one scene. Why did you keep that from
In
us?
my defense, there were some things I forgot, and some things I had to keep to my chest for time and spoilers. Now you know everything. Now you know the truth. You see things the way I do.
I just, for once, we've all seen the same Kamen Rider from beginning to end, and we all like it. Kamen Rider.
Don't worry. Next week we'll feel the same way about Kamen Rider Double. Pretty sure. Please don't fuck up in the final stretch, Double.
Hopefully.
Please.
I hope you like the ending. It won't, depending on your perspective.
Okay.
I hope so. But like this movie is great.
So, boys, what do y'all want to start with first?
Let's go back to front. I liked the ending so much that the second the original opening started playing over the credits, I started clapping, and I continued clapping for 5 minutes straight despite having a splitting headache that only got worse because I was clapping so hard. My hands turned red and started to hurt, and my mother, came in the room, looked at me like I was brain damaged, and I didn't care. I kept clapping and bobbing my head back and forward.
Now I wish you were in the theater with me when I watched it, especially when the OP started coming on after the movie was over.
I would have lost my goddamn mind.
I'm so mad I didn't get to see it. It would have been amazing. But even aside from that, there are so many great fucking scenes in this movie. One of the best set pieces, in my opinion, especially in the first half, was Batman's set piece. Particularly in the beginning of it, where all the other people dressed as Ruriko, just all in a line, and just the lighting and aesthetics alone it was so creepy, but it was so fucking striking, but without being overly edgy.
Especially because Ruriko's character design is just so great, because just her trench coat with the black outfit within it, it's just it's such a perfect combo that just copy pasting that multiple times just makes it eerie and awesome.
Yeah, the brown, leather jacket, the large black boots, and the bob haircut. For some reason, it's very visually striking and stands out. I think it's also because she's got this very, icy expression.
Yeah.
Yes. And it made even better when the guy just kills everybody in that fucking stadium.
Just as a demonstration. I'm well, that stood out.
Yeah, this is the kind of villainy I'm fucking
Yeah,
here for.
especially since what he wanted to do was basically just, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong since you guys have just seen it now, friggin' bio-warfare bullshit.
Yes.
Yes.
Full-on chemical warfare. Probably the most fucked up out of all the 5 villains' goals. Even more so than the one who wanted to just kill people, and the one who basically just wanted to establish a totalitarian dictatorship.
Debatably.
I found the villains in this film quite interesting, actually, because I really like what you told me. Like, CBF, you told me before about how they all aspire to their own ideas of happiness, and how they're, like, really screwed up ideas of happiness. I really like the idea that whatever particular brand of, or idea of happiness that they're pursuing has a lot to do with how they in life have suffered, and I also really like the idea that Shocker picks out people who've specifically, like, suffered at the hands of life really, really hard, and want to counterbalance that somehow. Like, I really like, for example, when you have the bee Org. Yeah, if I remember correctly, she was a bee or a wasp. How she's going on. Yeah, thank you. How she said she wants to make Ruriko cry, how she wants to break Ruriko down and, like, take everything from her. And the way she's saying that, she's breaking down as she's saying that, and you realize, oh, that's what happened to her.
Yeah. Or even, like, the reason they did it with the main character. Like, the reason they did this stuff, that Hongo was picked in the first place is like, oh, you want power because of what happened to your dad? Here you go. We're gonna turn you into this abomination now. Actually, no, that was a step too far. We're gonna revolt. We're getting you out of here, man.
Right. And I really love that angle that they really take, because the idea of Shocker and the kind of organization that they are is made even more, like, striking here. Even with the whole mind control angle that is being utilized throughout the movie, because other narratives tend to overuse that in a sense where it just completely changes them entirely without giving any spotlight to, like, their internal sort of machinations or whatever, but here it really works, because that happiness angle allows them to go into much more, like, emotionally turbulent places, and I really like that.
Yeah, without
angle.
just overriding another character's just established character and personality, because, you know, it's a movie and these are the first time we're seeing a lot of these people. This is all that's left of them now.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of which, Ichimonji was so much goddamn fun in this one.
Yeah.
I know. Dude's personality really popped.
And, like, he didn't even appear for all that much of it, but I fucking love it.
Yeah, like, he was only there for, like, I don't know, the last 30 to 40 minutes?
Yeah, but, like, those were some really good 30 or 40 minutes. I really love just his entire, like, interaction with Hongo when he's still a villain, and he's like, have you powered up yet? Okay, good. Now we can fight. He deliberately let him run so he can power up, so he can fight him when he's powered up.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, that's cool.
And,
That's
like,
cool.
the entire fight scene, it took me back to the days when I was, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 watching Power Rangers, where it's just, like, people jumping so far into the sky that they're able to just basically just have a full-on boxing match while they're in the sky before coming down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's some DBZ shit, but I love the way the fight actually kicks off, where they both jump god knows how high into the air, presumably 66.3 meters into the air, and then they just both do, like, one massive punch at each other.
Yeah.
Like, each other's fists. And I'm like, yo! I generally love the acrobatics in this film.
Same. It is one of the best
Yeah, and
parts
every
of
single fight scene, like, with each of the major Augs, it employs something completely different for the fighting styles. Like, we got that for Ichimonji, we got the speeding up for the Wasp, which I didn't like as much as these guys did. These guys liked it a lot. We have the really unnerving and fluid and awesome fight with, you know, with Spider Aug. Yeah, Hongo just bulldozing through all the mooks, and the 2-on-1 at first just bitch slapping that the Butterfly Aug, the final antagonist, gave to both of our main characters at this point.
I really like actually how that fight starts having out the same editing as the rest of the movie, where it's like really frantic, really difficult to tell what's going on, and it's just mainly following like the strikes at the critical moments rather than fully depicting the choreography unfolding. It's very, I don't know if like gonzo is the right word to use, but it's very subjective anyway, and I know gonzo is a style rooted in highly immersive subjectivism, but still. Anyway, but as the fight drags on and things grind down and the characters get weakened and whittled down, the camera is just like shaking, following these people like just crawling on the ground. I'm like, that's the kind of like dirty, like bloody fighting I really want to see from like Kamen Rider cutting down to its very core. Because like that's what I really liked in the initial manga. Like people, like the struggles being like so cutthroat and brutal that like it's just literally people tearing each other limb
like
from
that's
limb.
all it's reduced to at this point just becomes them just grappling each other and like smacking each other at this point, pretty much. They have so little left, yet so much to lose.
Yeah, which kind of cuts into a lot of the emotional scenes in this film, which are always fucking top
like
tier.
That one.
Can I just talk about that? Like that scene, since we're technically still on
The ugly
subject.
crying.
Well, not before, well, I don't know if it's before or after that, but the ugly crying scene with Hongo after losing Ruriko was so goddamn good. That was so good.
Yeah, when I told you guys that that one of the movie's greatest strengths was just how it let these feelings of isolation just sit with you, just sit on a character's facial expression, just one shot, like something like Ava and whatnot, which Ano also directed. This was the scene I meant in particular. Now you know why.
And it's totally not gonna be the thumbnail of the video.
Yeah, haha. Well, like, Hongo is just, like, standing there in the sunset. And this is why I really like Kamen Rider as a hero, because, like, all the future installments are so optimistic, but, like, I like the idea, the vision of Hongo in the original manga, where he's this guy who's had everything taken away from him, or, like, the vision that Kamen Rider Black presents, where it's, like, this guy who's had everything, and he continues to lose.
Yes.
Yeah, and like fighting to the end while losing everything, that's just his destiny. Like akin to like some of the more grim Batman depictions.
Or some of the grim Spider-Man depictions, especially. At least the ones that aren't just straight up misery porn. Paul, fuck you. Anyways, one of my other really favorite emotional scenes was definitely at the tail end of Ichimonji's introduction, when Ruriko, like, you know, fucking knocks out his mind control, and you can see him slowly...
He's kneeling.
He's kneeling down, he's slowly getting back his sense of self.
And she takes the helmet off, and he's just crying. He's just crying and crying, and he's paralyzed, because you don't know what he's gone through in his life, but every single painful moment that he's experienced, everything that he's lost, and everything that's made him who he is, who makes him a human being, that forms his identity, is being returned back to him all at once.
Yeah, just seeing his facial expressions.
Yeah, and some might say that, like, throwing him back in fighting the hybrid Og that showed up to kill Ruriko and the others. And some might say that that's a little bit too quick after that, but I don't know, I feel like that really fits Ichimonji. Just because, like, his whole thing is all like, I like being as free as I am and cutting at the truth on my own fucking terms. I'm not playing around with this shit anymore. You guys are dead.
He had this responsibility as a journalist, so he seemed like he was going off on his own way while Ichimonji does his thing, and they're like, no, that both paths were gonna converge. It's like, yeah, no, it's always gonna be, it was gonna be like this.
Actually, I actually saved this so I can recall the line, because one of my favorite scenes in the movie, it's when he gets up and he goes to confront the invisible Og. He's like, "Who are you?" And Ichimonji responds, "I just became Shokka's enemy, humanity's ally. I'm Ichimonji Hayato, and Kamen Rider." I'm like,
fuck yeah.
Oh, I think I just had an awesome gasm.
I mean, that's what this movie is, a strong series of awesome gasm.
Yeah.
Like, this is, because the thing is, this is like a very running theme, like in the meta sense of like Ichimonji Hayato. I feel no matter the interpretation, the man bounces back quickly. Like in the original manga, Hongo gets executed in a scene where the replica riders, the ones that are still alive, ride around him in a circle and shoot him, mortally wounding him. And then Ichimonji, who had the brainwashing broken by Hongo, decides just immediately to become the new Kamen Rider because he determines that the world is at a great loss without Hongo, and as Hongo saved him, it's his responsibility to take up that mantle. Except here, that role is transferred to Ruriko, which I also really like. And in Shin Kamen Rider Spirits, if you remember correctly, he very quickly comes to terms with the idea of what he has to do. Again, because of Ruriko, and he's able to like come back and cooperate with Hongo. On that note, I really like how over time, like, Ruriko seems to be given a bigger and bigger role, because, like, manga, very small role. Show, at least first 2 episodes, small role. Shin Spirits, much bigger role. Here, massive role. She's, like, as important as Kamen Rider.
Yeah, it's incredible what they did with Ruriko in this movie. I love it. I love her in this.
Yeah, just like the way she slowly goes from just like trusting him due to the circumstances to not quite trusting him and being on her own to slowly opening up to him and everything and relying on him to the point where they're basically equal partners in several senses before she finally has to pass is like, yes. And of course the final things being the stuff with Ichimonji and then giving Hongo the final message that he'd play before crying, just like, yes.
It's fantastic.
She's like, the scarf really suits you. I really like the whole thing about, well, a hero's gotta wear red. Like,
There are these little lines that Ruriko has throughout the movie that just... This is how you do a sort of kudere-ish character, like, really, really well. Where they have these sort of ostentatious lines here and there that really give you an idea of who they are underneath.
Yeah, and like, the first time you see that was when, like, again, she said that line, her father snickered and she just gave them this incredibly just like, fuck you, Dad, look.
One scene I also really liked with her, my favorite scene with her perhaps, was that scene where the Wasp Org, she's like, I'm gonna make Ruri cry, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and then she gets shot, and she's dying, and like, Ruriko's holding her, and she's crying, so you know...
It worked!
Irony!
Yeah.
Like, she did make her cry by dying, and it's like, oh, this was like Ruriko's only friend in the world, kind of in a, like, a fucked up way, but still, you know, they had this history, these shared experiences, and now, you know, despite the antagonistic positions they were put in, that's gone, and then she's just there, she's on the ground, she's crying, and she gets up and she tries to collect herself, but she says something like, can I have your shoulder? And he's like, okay, and she just, like, leans her head against him, and she's just there, like, standing there, crying.
Yeah, and like, right before that, after the girl gets shot, she immediately pieces together that, oh yeah, no, those suit guys that were tagging along with them for a while after, you know, Spider-Og was taken down, and she was like, so that's why you took out the Scorpion Lady, for her venom, to do this! And like she's, like, accusatory, but also understanding, but yeah, at the same time, she's still just hurt by that, even though they have to be like, yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was fucked up, but like, it somewhat had to be done, which is pretty fitting that this was the big turn that really made her start to fully open up to both Hongo and to the audience, I feel. But like, speaking of Hongo though, Hongo is great in this fucking movie. Like, this
Hongo is fantastic.
This guy is my goddamn hero.
Oh! I have to say, like, one thing I always disliked about Kamen Rider personally is that, oh, I'm no longer human, this sucks, and I'm like, bro, shut the fuck up, you have super strength, you have a cool suit, and you look like a guy, you just have super strength. It's kind of hard to take the, oh, woe is me, no longer human thing seriously, when that. I can take it more seriously in the manga, because, like, Shocker is so vicious in going after him and everybody he loves, and, like, never being safe in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, he's, like, still going, oh, I'm no longer human, and I'm like, dude, you look like a dude. But then, he goes into the mirror and for the movie, he takes the glove off, and he's got, like, this disgusting fucking deformed bug arm.
Yeah, like, it looks like Kamen Rider Gills or some shit. Like, no, it looks like, what was that one Kamen Rider you showed me that one time from one of the movies where he, like, physically
Kamen Rider Shin.
Yeah, Kamen Rider Shin. He looks kind of like that.
It's so gross.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of the main inspirations.
And then you see, when he just unlocks the jaw from his mask, he sees just, like, this face with, like, these red eyes, and just, he looks so corrupt, and he's just like, what the hell is this?
Bulging eyes and these scars. Like, he looks so gross.
Yeah, it's like a slimy version of Anti-Sora from Kingdom Hearts.
Oh my god.
Just like, yeah, like this corrupted version of you, but he's all like scaly and gillsy and buggy.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a fan art of that.
I love the idea that even though he had, like, the Kamen Rider suit forced onto him, like, he takes off the gloves and he takes off the helmet and he puts them right back on. He's like, nope.
Yeah, when he goes right to Ruriko and is all like, yo, what the fuck is this? But dude, I love Hongo's character throughout this goddamn movie. I was really afraid that they were going to make him too straight-laced and I guess too simple, where his struggle doesn't come off as charming and instead goes into misery porn territory, but that thankfully they didn't do that. In fact, they give him some added depth with his backstory in this movie compared to the other adaptations. where there's this conflict between him wanting to be the kind of person who can protect others because of the loss of his father as a cop. But near the end of the movie, after Ruriko died, there's that scene between him and the suits where he's all like, I want to be as compassionate as my father, but I want to be stronger than him and use the power that I have to do the right fucking thing. And I'm all like,
that was so great.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Everything I wanted out of this movie. That is everything I ever wanted out of this movie right fucking now.
Yeah, and two of my other favorite scenes before that regarding him was like...
Wait, CBF, wait a sec, CBF, I have to cut you off there and be like, I have to add to that, because I really like the scene where they're like, so what, are you going for revenge? And he's like, no, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm like, that's what I wanted to hear, because that reminds me of my favorite scene in the manga, where I think he just killed, it was either Batman or Cobra Man. He took like a giant tombstone, a giant cross-shaped tombstone, I think it was Batman, and like crushed his rib cage with it, and like, he's like, this is not a moment to celebrate, for he too was a victim of Shocker's evil ambitions. And I'm like, that's what I really like that Anno did. He reflected that conscientiousness in Hongo's character, where he does not celebrate defeating villains, and he doesn't do what he does out of rage, but out of compassion and a hope for the future and a thoughtfulness for other people. I'm like, that's who Hongo is. That's why I like Hongo. And that was represented perfectly in this film.
Yeah, and they also represented it in an amazing way when, like, remember when I said, like, he had a little bit of hesitance towards the beginning, partially because he was processing things? I forgot / didn't mention that the other part of it was that, yeah, no, this was still right off the heels of him just demolishing a bunch of mooks, turning them into paint. So he's just like, not only is he processing all the info that he's receiving and the fact that all of this has happened to him, he's also having to process the fact that, no, I literally killed a bunch of people with this power you forced onto me, and you want me to keep doing that to people?
Oh yeah, dude painted the screen red. I also like the fact that, like, Professor Midorikawa is just explaining everything, that he made him into what he is, and he's just standing there. He's, like, so stunned he can't even get mad, because he's just, like, processing. And that's partially, by the way, why Professor Midorikawa dies. And then later on, when, like, he has his leg broken, that's the reason that Ruriko dies. Because Ichimonji was stunned from just like taking everything in, and then he says something that basically means the same thing as what Ruriko said to him when Professor Midorikawa died. He like subsumed her role, and now he is to Ichimonji what she was to him. I'm like, yo, that's growth. That's growth.
Yeah, that's so much fucking growth. I think one of the things that you mentioned, Lonecrit, about Hongo lamenting his fight against Shocker, specifically against the specific enemies that he fights. I really like how well it's demonstrated without overly dramatized in the movie. Like, for example, right, in the outright banger set piece after that point in the movie, where Hongo and Ichimonji are fighting against the other Grasshopper Augs, the other Kamen Riders in that motorcycle battle, which, by the way...
Sex.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sex.
Yes.
Sex.
But, if you notice, at the very end of that fight, Hongo first, like, lowers his head after they're finished with killing them all, and Ichimonji just sees that and he just follows suit, and that tells you all you need to know, and then they're like, okay, let's get moving.
Yeah, and two things about that as well in that scene, like, the fight. Two things. One thing Lonecrit pointed out to me, and one thing I want to mention was just like, he told me that in referencing, like, I forget which reference it was specifically between both the 12 and the 6, but it starts off as 12, and then when round 2 happens, there's only 6 left.
Yeah, because there are 12 riders in the manga, but there are 6 in the show. And so when they start, there are like 12 of them, but then some of them get taken out, so then when they go and like they do the mid-air rider kicks, then it's like 6 versus 2.
Yeah, and then of course there's that scene where they were all circling around Hongo, and one of them just starts shooting at his helmet, and that looks so awesome.
Yeah, they're freaking... That's how you double tap. That's how you double tap.
Oh, dude, that's a million tap. Also, I'm there like, no, not like this. Not like this. Don't make me see my boy go like this.
They didn't. Not like that, anyway.
And then
Not
Ichimonji
like
comes in, I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, then you really... It wasn't like that.
The scene where they launch the motorcycles and they explode. By the way, how do we feel about Kamen Rider Zero?
Oh,
That's a good suit. That's a good suit.
That is fire.
I love how they double, triple, and quadruple down on the martial arts shit, where, like, the final villain, the Butterfly Org, has, like, it has the very, like, martial arts, almost like a gi, or, like, Chinese martial arts, or something like outfit. Because, like, prana, that's, like, dude, that's basically, like, chi. Or stuff from, like, a lot of Chinese martial arts. Like, because that's something I remember, and in, like, karate as well, I think it's a concept. Because I remember that that's something Hiroshi Fujioka, who played Hongo Takashi, like, referred to in interviews, that he says makes the Showa riders strong, that that's, like, a force they leverage. So I like the idea that they bring that here, and, like, represent it both as a person's soul, and, like, the energy of life. I think this is something interesting that sets apart the villains from the heroes. Because I really like the idea how they reflect how Hongo is not just empowered by nature, but he's empowered by life, and how the villains of the film abuse that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting metaphysical angle to go with early Kamen Rider, because as far as I am aware, that wasn't really as much of a thing. But it's an interesting angle to go out of that really sells, as you said, a dynamic that both the antagonists and protagonists have, and just how desperate things are. Where, like, the villains, especially the main villain, the brother of Ruriko, Ichiro, Kamen Rider Zero, his whole thing is basically human instrumentality.
Yeah.
I also really like the way he moves, by the way. Do you notice how during fights, the way he moves is kind of like dancing?
Yeah.
Like he does a lot of swaying.
Yeah, like a somehow even more fluid version of what the Spider Og was doing. But a lot more serene and a lot less, like, gross, icky, unnatural, like, sorta a little too above humanity for comfort.
Yeah, like, I love, again, the swaying of the head and how it just, like, pops Ichimonji and Hongo with, like, the prana, like, in the stomach and, like, keeps blowing them back. By the way, Ichimonji's dialogue, I love how he's fighting. He's like, damn, he hits strong. When he's getting up off the ground, I'm like, yo, this guy's
like,
fun, I like him.
He's still, like, the more normal guy of the two writers at this point. And yeah, like, speaking of him, now that we've popped...
Is he?
At least, like, I guess just, like, the more, you know, like, regularly easygoing type of the two. So he reacts more, you know, just like how a lot of people would react. Just like, shit!
Ichimonji's always the funny one.
Yeah, and just like, and now that we're here, since we finally just like uncorked that champagne bottle that I set up during the main episode, just like, yeah, Ruriko's brother. That was the other, like, amazing. That was probably my favorite scene in the movie, where we finally get to the last thing that Ruriko set up. And that was like a sort of just like post-life, just like Soul's field for her and him. And then he's like, oh, you knew this would happen, didn't you? There's only room for one more left in. And just like, he's breaking down, trying to hold it in as he rejects her, just being like, no, I've done too much. I've caused too much harm. I cannot be with you. As he's dying. And he just has the most amount of heartbreak as he's begging him to stay. And just like,
it's so good. It's so freaking good.
I also really like the idea when Hongo and Ichiro are, like, crawling on the ground, like, fist fighting, and, like, Ichiro, from when he started, like, out so calm, he is just completely breaking down.
I like the dialogue that they have during that moment as well, where it's just Ichiro trying to basically convince Hongo that his fight is pointless. You know, he's kind of doing the Rick Sanchez meme, that all this, you know, fighting for the humans is pointless because they're so ruled by their limitations and instincts that they're always going to be put into conflict with one another.
All this Cyrus shit.
He's just, like, scapegoating, though, to cover up his vulnerability, and that's, like, all the Shocker people, but I like how he best represents this idea of, like, he is a person who's, like, so hurt that he's willing to, like, force this vision and damage the world to cover up for that vulnerability, and that, like, that way that life has screwed him over.
And only in finally releasing that vulnerability does he acknowledge that, and that's when he lets go of everything.
Yeah, because it really separates him from Hongo, where it's just like, you know, Hongo understands that these things are a part of life, and I really loved his specific line that I want to be stronger and try to understand others even when I can't. I want to change myself, not the world. And it's like, oh, that's really good. That is really good.
Like, I really like this idea that, like, some Kamen Rider installments, like, either don't represent misrepresent or slip up on. It's the idea that Hongo Takeshi is a good hero because he's a good guy. I feel like that's the thing that the best Kamen Rider installments nail, is that their lead characters are good heroes because they're good people. They're not good heroes because they do good things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really sold with Hongo's, like, ultimate sacrifice at the end of the movie. And him literally passing down his will to Ichimonji. And it's like, Ichimonji's line at the end when he's just looking at the rising sun, you know, paralleling the scene with Hongo from earlier. And he's like, you know what? This feels right. This is cool.
Yeah, I really love just Ichimonji's dialogue where he introduces himself and he's like, I'm gonna fight you now, but this doesn't feel quite right. And then they team up and he's like, yeah, now this feels right.
Like he already knew that, yeah, something was off about him and about the circumstances. He was already starting to break control.
And I love, like, number one, I love the added thing that they add at the... Because throughout the movie, there's these symbols that, of course, Shocker put in order to identify each of their Augs at the back of both Arai's heads. And in the end of the movie, there's, like, instead of, like, their usual code names, the code name is Kamen Rider 2+1. I'm like, yo!
Oh, yo! By the way, speaking of which, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, this, like, CBF didn't... Like, it didn't stick out to CBF, it stood out to me. One of my favorite things in this film is the idea of how it emphasizes how characters define themselves, who they are. I really like the idea when Spider-Man and Kamen Rider are, like, walking down, like, parallel, and they're talking, and Spider-Man is like, now Bata Org, now Grasshopper Org, and he's like, no, I am Kamen Rider. I'm like,
Yeah.
I like that, because it's the idea that he's not being defined by Shocker's evil ambitions and what was planned to him. He decides who he is, and he reclaims, like, that suit, what's been done to him, and he makes it something of his own design and his own intentions.
And speaking of Ichimonji and the suit, just like his original design in this movie was already freaking amazing. I might have loved it even in some ways, especially the helmet more, but the ending. Just like when he looks at the new suit, he's just like, this mask feels nice.
It's the classic green.
And he's like, this mask feels nice. It doesn't have the cold, hungry feel of the last one. It feels kind.
It's the classic green, and I'm like, yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, it works even better because in the context of the movie, the mask, I'm pretty sure, Ruiko said that it heightens Hongo's and presumably Ichimonji's, like, survival instincts and fight or flights and violent intentions and all that shit. Makes it easier to kill people.
An aversion to bloodshed.
Yeah, it makes it easier to kill people. But, like, at the end of the movie, this really emphasized how much Hongo has changed himself and the power that was thrusted upon him into something new, something different, something with actual value to it. That's really good. And you know what? To pretty much just end this off, that's what this shit is. This movie is symbolizing a legacy with value. That's fucking great.
And it'll carry on that legacy as Hongo lives on in that kind helmet.
Yeah. I just want to mention one thing, by the way. I really like the sword fight with Wasp Org and the other guy when they're like 2-on-1 comboing Hongo. That's a great design. That's a great choreography.
And a great set.
And like her design with the kimono, like the kind of Yakuza thing, that's beautiful. That looks great. It's like, oh my god, so pretty. But yeah, like to end off, like when Ichimonji's like riding off into the sunset with the classic legacy suit, practically flipping off the 2005 movie where they look like dark and dreary.
Especially considering this movie, they always look dark and dreary. Until the end.
Yeah. And he has that, like, that final, like, mental interaction with, like, Hongo, much like how they telepathically communicate in the manga and, like, Hongo's a brain in the jar. That's great. It makes me wonder, sequel.
I don't want it. This is fine where the fuck it is and let it stay there. This is good. I don't want more. I don't need more. This is all I wanted out of this movie. This movie is everything I ever wanted. And I got it.
I kinda want an Ichimonji movie too, though.
Fair enough.
Anyway, this is a 7 out of 10 movie. At least.
7 or 8? In my heart, it's a 10.
Yeah, fair. And yeah, imagine the next one, we get a scene similar to what I talked about last time, where it's just, now it'll be Ichimonji just setting up camp, cooking food, and just being like, yeah, no, it's less convenient, but I prefer this stuff. Just because that scene, that was another just like humanizing moment for Hongo.
Oh yeah, this movie's so miserable and there's so much of like people crying and standing around and looking lonely, and I'm like, that's the way it should be.
And yet, it's also so warm. It's warm, it's kind. And that's what Ichimonji likes. I'm CBF.
I'm Kaiser Shonen.
And I'm Lonecrit. And I finally got these guys to watch Kamen Rider.
And this is the Newtypes podcast. Enjoy seeing it on Amazon Prime and wherever else like these guys did. Because I saw it in theaters.
If you haven't seen it, definitely do so, or I will break your kneecaps like Ichimonji will.
That said... Semaru Shoka Jigoku no Gunda.
You're adults, I swear.
Go! Let's go! Kagayaki Machine! Rider! Jump! Rider! Kick! Kamen Rider! Kamen Rider! Rider!
But yeah, somebody should definitely give Anno a blowjob.